Need for Speed Heat, we are on Xbox One X, which is getting a native 4K resolution with dynamic resolution scaling at 30 FPS. This is an open world racing title, and it does feature HDR, which is great looking. I will mention that I couldn't get the Xbox DVR to function properly on this game, so I had to use the traditional capture card, so it's not going to look visually as perfect as it would going right off the DVR, and I apologize for that, but it's kind of out of my control, and more has to do with the console. So as you can see, we're getting a very dynamic, interesting looking world. This is one part of the game though, and that's kind of interesting, because you're like, one part, what does that mean? So the title is actually split between day and night. It's very distinct and very different. So during the day, you are racing to sort of earn cash and currency, whereas nighttime, you're battling for rep. And rep is basically what gets you access to new missions and new sort of upgrades and mods for your vehicle. The game is full of a number of upgrades and tweaks, and you really do get to feel a good sense of progression for your vehicle as you complete missions and get access to new, cooler things to make you ride a little bit faster, a little bit, cooler looking. I'm trying to show off some elements, but they come out better at night. So basically, I've got like smoke that's all green, as you can see there, and like green fumes. And yeah, I've spent a little bit too much on upgrading my ride so that it looks aesthetically cool, when I should be spending my money on parts and everything like that to make it run better. So moving past that, this is a sort of multiplayer focused title, but not at all. It's like a passive multiplayer that I would say is similar to what Forza Horizon does, in terms of just there are other people out there on the map. You can see them doing their own little thing. Hopefully there's some examples. There's not right now. Oh, there we go. So you can see, they're out there, they're driving around, they're playing. It's kind of interesting. It's a neat mechanic, so we're just gonna pinpoint this onto a nearby garage so that we can show that aspect of play off. Great. So they're there. The game doesn't really have a dedicated sort of multiplayer element, so that's a little bit disappointing in my opinion, just because it would have been nice to have some, kind of modes in that you can compete with other people in. It's basically single player with this aspect of other people kind of being out there, but not really at all. So I'm trying to show off a little bit of the off-road driving, which is really rough. To stay on the roads in this one, in Forza Horizon, you can actually go out and kind of drive and be fine. This one, it really doesn't quite like you getting out and rugged with your vehicles. You can, of course, upgrade them, make them better, which is kind of what we're going to be racing to show off in a second here. Great. So while we showed off the day, and the map is kind of great looking, I think. It kind of feels a little bit boring during the day, especially in comparison to the night and what you can do there. So the open world does have a number of races and things you can do. You can fix up your car at gas stations. You can hit billboards. There's some collectible type things. But it's not really got a whole lot going on, in my opinion. Which is weird, because, it kind of seems like it's full of life. There's lots of little details in the environment and everything like that. But at the same time, it's not quite as fun to work through, and a lot of that has to do with the way that the story is set up in this one. We're going to talk about that just a bit more as soon as we reach our safe house, which are basically little points that you can fast travel to during the day. And I thought I would drive there instead of just enter. So we're entering the garage, and we get this cool loading screen, which is so slick and cool looking. It takes a little bit to load, but it's not too bad, especially since it's open world and you can drive anywhere without having to deal with one of these. So here's the garage. You can customize your, I know about passive items. You can customize your vehicle, tons of different things. You can see how that affects, how your vehicle drives and stuff like that. I don't have a whole lot going on here already, but if I've upgraded it. I've definitely made it better than the stock one. And you can buy other cars and you can rev the engine. Kind of cool. Kind of nice. Swap out the engine. Lots of customization. The body, changing all the different little things on it, even like the mirrors and stuff like that. So you can really tweak it, kind of change it to be whatever you want it to be, which is nice. Lots of customization and personalization for your vehicle, which is fun. And then you can do like paint wraps and edit the wraps, and there's like a whole kind of color thing. You see the color options here, and you can change the finish. You can be like metallic and stuff. And then there's the pro ones where you get a little bit more in depth. So that's just available. I thought I'd show that off, and decals too, right? If you want to have some weird shape on your car, you could do that. And there's community ones, and then you can do effects like I've already shown with all the green stuff and different horn types and the stances and the exhaust sounds. And studio, okay, yeah, didn't do that. Anyways, you can also change your character too. And at this point, we're going to switch to the night because that's where the fun comes in. Great, so here we are at night, and you can immediately see the huge difference in how much more awesome this is. The lighting, the effects, the style, especially when we get into a race, it's going to look so cool. So talking about the characters again, I guess we're just going to give ourselves like a quick mission. We'll do that one. It seems like a nice sprint. You can kind of completely really customize your character, like hair color, outfits, hundreds of different like styles and stuff. It doesn't matter too much, but I guess they do show up in cutscenes. You get to pick from a series of avatars. I didn't really find one that I thought was really representative of me personally, so I just picked this sort of edgy looking lady and run the green hair to match the green car because that's sick. So now we'll jump into a race, and you can really see what Knight's going to present here because it is quite an experience. So you jump up to a race area, and then you can choose like solo. You can challenge other people don't join it. It's like a multiplayer thing. Nobody joins in. And then you can just do your race like this. And you get an idea of it, what you need car-wise, what you can gain. And you see like the rep score and everything in the corner. So with this being night, there are some other changes too. The cops are more active. If they catch you, they'll take stuff like your money away. And you're trying to gain reps, so that's not good to get caught because that's negative on that too. And it's just kind of an interesting element because the cops are out there, they're cycling around, they're looking. And at the same time, I think that's kind of cool and a neat element of like Need for Speed is like, you know, battling against the cops and stuff. It can also be annoying because I'll try to go to a race and there's constantly cops on my ass when I'm trying to like just start a race, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's kind of frustrating, to be honest. Especially because you can escape them and they'll still be in the area, and then, you know, sometimes I just say screw it and I go to daytime because I can't get to that race right now. So they're an interesting element of play, sometimes an annoying one, but I think it's a neat mechanic that they could have even taken a little bit further. It gets pretty crazy when you get like 5 or more of them racing and chasing you down and hitting your vehicle and stuff and damaging it. I think that's really interesting. So with this being night, I do want to say it looks just amazing. Just the lighting, the cars, the look, the head-on collisions. But yeah, it's really quite well done, I think, in terms of the visuals. It feels like a completely different world from day. I mean, day's a little bit more casual and easygoing, but night, there's just something that feels really special about it in this game. And I was surprised by them doing that split, because, you know, other games have, like, the cycles and everything like that. This one just, it feels like a completely different sort of world altogether. And I guess that's to add a little bit of a mix between the scene of it being like the night scene and the day scene, you know, what you get story-wise. So talking about the story, it's kind of a little too light, and I think that kind of leans into the fact that this game feels really slow to get going. Starting to see more and more missions appear, but I've been playing this for quite a while, and it just kind of feels very sparse. There's a few racing options, not a whole lot, and it just kind of feels a little bit repetitive in that regard, and I don't feel like I'm really driven to anything. The story is very light, as I've mentioned. It started out really interesting because it's this sort of battle of like the street people against, you know, the cops that are, I guess, kind of corrupt to a degree, but yeah, it's really neat how it's painted, and I think they should have maybe went the route where that's just the opening, and then you kind of like go out there and race and, you know, make your mark and stuff like that. But instead they keep adding little story bits to it, but not really enough to make it interesting. So every once in a while, after I hit a certain rep gain or do, you know, whatever progression wise, I'll eventually get a little bit of a story which just revolves around you driving with someone, doing a race, and then getting maybe a cutscene if you're lucky, and then going on about your day. It's kind of pointless, and that's a little bit disappointing. And I'm being rather negative in that regard, but I do actually find this game quite fun. You know, despite what I've been mentioning, it's actually quite enjoyable in my opinion. I've had a good time working on my vehicle, modifying it, enhancing it. But I will note that there are some elements to it that I think could be done a little bit better. The fact that this game doesn't have a rewind system, I think, is very silly, especially considering, you know, the modern era of racing titles. It's a nice option to have. I know, I don't know anyone that doesn't like it, but I can see that some of the more professional players out there might be like, but I think it's a good option for the casual player. So rewind basically allows you to go back in time, you know, a few seconds if you mess up in a race, because sometimes it's frustrating. You might hit like an overpass like I did once, and you have to redo like a long race, and it gets just kind of tiring. There are 3 difficulty options. There's easy, medium, and hard, so you get to kind of choose what you want, so that's kind of nice. And I think they have a fairly good amount of content here. It's just pacing needed to be worked on a bit. And I say pacing as in using the story more effectively when it does come into play, and not having us do so many kind of just like side missions, because you're not really guided, which is good, but at the same time, when you are attempting to actually provide a narrative in this type of racing title, you need it to be more focused. Maybe have the story be something you can work through right away if you'd like to, or ignore entirely. Or perhaps you do the story quickly, and then after that you just gotta kind of free roam and do missions. I don't quite like directly comparing titles, you know, games, because, you know, you can compare within franchises, but when you compare against other titles, it's like, But you look at something like Forza Horizon, that series, which has been really the landmark and just the top tier of racing open world, and even in, you know, circuit over the last decade, this entire generation generally. You can't help but make some comparisons, though. That one is just unlimited fun to work through, whereas this feels a little bit more tedious and a little bit more tiring. I do think it has some neat mechanics. They've done a great job with the night here. Great work with the cars in terms of the progression involved. Just like, I don't quite know. I will mention that they've got a really bumpin' track behind this game. The music's actually pretty good. I don't know any of the songs, but they feel really right atmospherically to what I'm doing, so that's good. I've turned them off because copyright issues on YouTube, obviously. So yeah, sorry, but try my best with the videos, guys. Same with like the recording DVR thing. Sometimes it acts up and it gives me problems, and I just can't do anything about it. So I think we're going to go towards another race in order to show off more of that element of play. Try to find something that is, I guess, circuit-based. You could see like all the cops around the island, so it's just like a pain to try to get to any of these to actually do them. Is this circuit-based? It's more of a sprint, but it'll show off the city. Yeah, we'll do that one. And you will notice, you know, a difference between racing during the day and at night in terms of what's available. And I wanted to show off the race during the day, so hopefully this one isn't too long. We'll have to see where time gets us. When I had first attempted getting the recordings going and was having issues on the DVR, I did have a perfect setup with the day and everything like that, but sometimes it gets thrown out the window. But the night is really the coolest part of this, even despite the annoying cops, which I think is a cool mechanic. I'd like to be able maybe to turn them or tone it down a little bit from them, or, you know, during regular racing events that they maybe don't show up, because you're in like a set race and all of a sudden like the cops will come, and they do seem to focus on you more than the AI, which is a little bit annoying. And speaking of AI, just like again with the rewind things, it can kind of get a little bit tiring, because there's always one guy, like if you're blowing away the competition, there's always one guy that somehow like catches up to you and keeps it really close, and if you mess up once, you're just like never able to actually, you know, catch up to them again, which is a little bit annoying. Oh, it looks like some people online are getting chased down by the cops. That's neat. So here we go into another race. Let's get rolling. I do really like what they've done with like the aesthetics and the start of the race. You know, sometimes you get like people's into the side, cool particle effects. Like, yeah, that's another really neat thing that I think I have to highlight more, are the use of particle effects and the damaging in the environment. You can really mess up the world, and I think that's great. Like if there's a barricade and you're kind of racing on it in a circuit race and you hit against it, you can just tear that barricade up. It's crazy. You get lots of little destruction things. You can go through trees, you can smash up vehicles. It's really quite cool. I will note that, like, driving-wise, the cars do feel a little bit odd. They get better handling-wise, obviously, as you pimp out your ride and enhance things. But you're doing a lot of the e-brake style in this, or drifting. There's like, it's weird that you get taught how to do that stuff like briefly. It's like, oh, okay, you gotta be able to drift and e-brake and blah blah blah. And then in the second chapter, it's like, yo man, you gotta meet the drift king guy, and he like teaches you to drift. I was like, okay, a little bit weird. I will note that you can also cheat a bit in this one in regards to like going around positions. You can even go on like completely side kind of roads as long as you're keeping relatively close. You can go around that. Just thought I'd mention that. So yeah, kind of like really leans into the arcade element of racing, in my opinion. Just like how the turns look. It seems, in my opinion, to be like really over the top, and yeah, we'll kind of show that off here. Just it feels like a full sort of like stutter stop and then drive forward. At least with this vehicle, that's kind of what I get to it. Which seems a bit odd, but definitely I think it's a really enjoyable racing title. They've made a really interesting sort of world here. It can be a bit bland during the day, and the races can be a bit repetitive and boring, but I think overall there's a lot of content in this. It seems to render and run quite well. I mean, the 30 FPS probably won't be for everyone, but that's just kind of the state of open world racing titles this generation. Would have been nice to have like a 1080p 60 FPS mode, because I know the recent Horizon title does that. Forza Horizon. But again, it's not really fair to be directly comparing the two, because they're different types of games and they try to do different things. So this is the city, which is really neat looking. I liked the idea of the story. I think they started out really well with it. It had a compelling and interesting sort of situation, but then it didn't necessarily fulfill that to a full degree, in my opinion. So here we are during the day. Just kind of gonna do one day race. I think we have time for. So yeah, that's kind of just like the change between the day and the night. And there are some tweaks, in regards to whether you can fast travel, whether you can switch, to particular day or night and stuff. Like you can just switch to go to night there. I don't know if you saw that at the bottom, but then you can't do that during the night because you got to get to like a safe room, and there's all these elements at play that kind of distinctly split the two, which is interesting. And again, I hope I haven't sounded too negative in this overall, because I do actually like the game. I like the ideas behind it, and I have fun playing it. But there are some issues and some things that would need to be worked on in the future. I'll be honest, I've never really actually played much of a Need for Speed title. Played a little bit of Payback at E3 a while back, and I remember watching people play it on GameCube, the franchise, but I wasn't really into racing titles. It's just kind of started this generation that I've been playing them, and getting more and more interested in the titles that are driving based. So, oh, that's not good. Yeah, and I think this is a series I'd like to see more of down the road. I know it's long running and it's got a huge history with a lot of people that really do enjoy it. I think it's a good starting point. If this is something you're curious about, you'll be like, oh, okay, I'll get a good amount of time into this, get enough value out of it, because it does have some mechanics that help it stand out from other racing titles of today. At the same time, I do see that it needs some work in some areas in order to really propel it forward. It can be a bit repetitive, a little bit boring at times if you're working on getting to that narrative, but at the same time you get quite a lot out of it. Some cool cars, there's a nice sense of car progression, nice modding, a well-detailed Florida style world, I guess. A good selection of races. It does take a little bit of time to get to there. I don't know if you've noticed, well, you probably should have. Occasionally rain comes and stuff, so it's kind of a nice little thing. I like seeing the racing in titles like this, Racing in the Rain, to clarify there. Just because I think it looks really neat on the vehicles and the world and the effects they're able to achieve with that. And I'm kind of excited to show off a little bit more of the destruction with this, because I think I'm going to actually be able to sort of smash up the walls a bit, whether or not that's accidental or on purpose. Yeah, really over the top kind of braking. It's kind of funny, but Yeah, so you do get a good variety of the racing options that are present in the video. I mean, obviously, I can't show a ton of them just runtime-wise, but you get an idea of things. Sometimes they're sprints, sometimes you get drift challenges, sometimes they're little side activities you're taking place in. You could be doing circuit racing like we are now. There are a lot of different options are present. I wish they would have taken things a little bit further and had a little bit more fun with it too, because I do feel that this is a series. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you get to see all those break apart. Sometimes they really chalk up. These ones just kind of go flying, but there are, yeah, see? If this was any other title or racing game, you'd be able to go backwards. But nope, now I've lost the entire race because of that, and I'll have to restart it after this. Anyways, but... oh, I think it's this stuff kind of breaks a little bit better. No, it just seems to be going out of the way. That's not good. But I wish they would have a little bit more fun with it, as to say, because, you know, Need for Speed, to me, is crazy adrenaline, fast-paced racing, which they kind of present here. I think they do get that. But I mean in the sense that they could make it a little bit more silly, a little bit more fun in that regard, have the serious campaign, which is fine, and some serious racing, but also add like little funny type events and stuff. Kind of like, you know, in Forza Horizon, the last one, they did like a Halo crossover. That's just an example of like a fun, silly, different sort of thing you can do with the racing thing. I'm not saying it has to be like a crossover, but I'm saying just come up with some weird events, or like the Forza, the showcase events, where it's like, you know, you're doing some insane race against like a blimp or something silly. You know, just to kind of like mix up and add a little bit more of a fun injection into the experience. Not to say I don't have fun with this, but just, you know, it's an idea where they could push things a little bit forward. Oh wow, I really have issues with that corner, don't I? But yeah, this has been Need for Speed Heat. I've obviously just entirely botched and embarrassed myself in this last race. If you have been sticking around, try my best. Anyways, I think it's got like a lot of content to it. It's got some neat mechanics, and it tries to do some things that are a little bit different, which I think is really good. It doesn't necessarily hit all the marks, but it's a very solid, confident racing experience. If you're a fan, I think, of the series, you'll be like, okay, this is maybe a return to more like form for the franchise, you know, getting back to the roots a little bit. Or if you're just a, you know, a casual racing fan, you might be like, oh, this is something that's a little bit different for me to enjoy, and I'll have fun with it. So you do get, you know, different types of options present for it. I think, you know, visually it does look really good. Plays fairly well, especially when you enhance your car. There's some cool effects for pimping out your ride that I think are really nice, that other games could maybe take some notes from too. But it does deliver, you know, a need for speed.